ahead and get started.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to get started now. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Andrea Furster. I'm a member of the board of directors of DC Refers. Welcome to this DC Refers Connect program, which I am super excited about. Before we get started on our program with our speakers, I want to tell you a little bit about DC Refers, and then I'll introduce our wonderful speakers, Kirra, Jarratt, and Michanda, Myles from the DC Bar Foundation, who, as you know, will be talking about the DC Legal Aid Transformational Network and Coordinated Intake and Referral System. So for those of you who do not know, DC Refers is a network of lawyers and mediators who have agreed to provide reduced fee services to people of modest means. And that means people who do not qualify for free legal aid, but they still can't afford a lawyer. That's between people who make between 200 and 400% of the poverty guidelines. And these lawyers and mediators have agreed to provide reduced fee legal services to this client population through our online directory, which you see a screenshot of here, and that can be found at www.dcrefers.org. And this is a landing page of our directory. And what it does is it guides prospective clients through an interview that helps them connect with a lawyer who has expertise in the area that they need assistance for. And it is also a portal for lawyers who would like to apply to be on our directory. We have nearly 30 lawyers in our network, and they represent a wide variety of practice areas. Our lawyers have agreed to provide legal services for no more than between $75 and $150 an hour to clients who meet our income criteria for being in that modest means care category. And if a client earns less, if a client earns too much to qualify for legal services, lawyers are free to charge their normal legal rates. And if the client earns less than that modest means care category, we refer them to legal service providers. You want to go to the next slide? So really want to talk up our reduced fee mediator directory as well. This is the first in the country low bono mediation service, and it works much like our lawyer directory. Qualifying clients can connect with an experienced mediator of their choice, who again will charge no more than $75 to $150 per session, split between the parties. Next slide. So this is something that we want to emphasize. If you are a lawyer with at least 2 years of legal experience, or you know of a lawyer who might be interested in applying to be on our directory, we urge you to apply to be on our panel of reduced fee lawyers. To apply, you need to have your own malpractice insurance, provide client and professional references, and pay a $50 application fee. So please join our network, or if you know of qualifying lawyers or people who might be interested in being part of this network, let them know about us. And just a quick PSA for our next program for the DC Refers Reconnect. This will take place on Thursday, August 11th at 4:30 p.m. and it will feature Samina Cluck, who is the founder of Amplify Your Voice. And Samina will talk about making the most of your own personal brand and social media impact. So I hope you will join us in August and also stay tuned for the DC Refers Reconnect programs in the fall. And now I am very excited to introduce our speakers for today's program, Kirra, Jarratt, and Michanda Myles. Kirra is the Chief Executive Officer of the DC Bar Foundation. And among the many things that she does for the foundation, it includes managing the foundation's budget of $13 million, which makes strategic and impactful grants to DC's community of legal service providers. And Michanda is the foundation's network manager. And one of the networks that she manages is the DC Legal Aid Transformations Network, which will be our topic for today. So I'm really excited to hear more about the network and the proposed centralized intake and referral system. This is going to be a fantastic resource for the District of Columbia, and I want to hear where you are, and would also really love to hear about what role you see for DC Refers in the centralized intake concept. So thank you, and excited to hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Andrea. We're really happy to be here. Can you hear me? Thumbs up. Okay. Happy to be here and have an opportunity to talk about the work that the foundation is doing. I'm here with my colleague, Michanda Myles, who joined the foundation 2.5 months ago, and in large part because of what we're talking about today. So I think, Michanda, are you doing the slides?
I am. I just need co-hosting abilities to share screen. Okay.
Try it now.
Awesome. All right, so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to give you a quick overview of the Bar Foundation. So you'll see that on the next slide. And then we're going to talk to you about the DC Legal Aid Transformations Network, and then the initiative that is consuming most of our time right now and that we're super excited about, which is coordinated intake and referral, and then leave some time for discussion and questions. And so to start with, I thought I'd take an opportunity to say who we're not. And so I think a lot of times the foundation gets confused with the DC Bar and the DC Bar Pro Bono Center and the Bar Association of DC. And so we definitely share the name DC and Bar, but we're entirely separate from the bar itself. Although we have sort of a traditional C3, C6 relationship with the bar, and that the bar formally approves foundation board members. But we're a separate organization, separate funding streams. And then the DC Bar Pro Bono Center is another partner, obviously focusing on pro bono, which the foundation doesn't focus on at all. And then the Bar Association of DC, which is, one of the many voluntary bar organizations in our community. So I just want to put that out there as we move on to talk about the mission of the foundation, which is to fund, support, and improve legal representation of people who are financially disenfranchised or who are otherwise underserved in DC. And so that is largely the same mission that we've had since 1977. Our vision is a place where everybody has access to justice regardless of income. So it shouldn't matter whether you have a legal aid problem, whether you know where to go to get one, whether you get an attorney, whether you think you can afford one, whether you know somebody who knows somebody. Everybody should have the same outcomes within our justice system. And so that is our vision. And then in September of 2019, if you go 2 slides, the foundation adopted a strategic framework after probably about a year-long planning process. We really thought about where do we want to go as an organization? What do we think are the opportunities? Where can we have the greatest impact? And we identified as a goal, sort of reimagining the delivery of civil legal aid in our city. And so we adopted 5 strategies as a part of that. And I'll just mention them briefly. The first one is engage all stakeholders in the work, which is about not just partnering with the folks that we've always partnered with, like the DC Access to Justice Commission, I see Nancy, like the pro bono community, like our grantees, but also thinking about other allied professionals who are touching the same community and how do we all work together to help that same community. It also means speaking directly with district residents and those we hope to help, to hear what are the challenges that you're facing, where are you going to get legal help, how can we change our system to serve you better. For identify the unmet civil legal needs, again, talking directly to district residents, also listening to our grantees, through our own evaluation efforts, understanding where to direct resources, infusing racial justice and racial equity in our work, just making sure that we're centering that. The foundation has done a lot of work in looking at how do we make grant decisions, how do we operate as a foundation, how do we hire, how do we staff, how do we recruit board members. I'm really looking at all principles of racial justice and racial equity throughout the work. And then based on all of that, we want to fund with intention. So we don't want to just fund the requests that are coming in the door. Ultimately, we want to be very strategic in how funds are deployed. And so that is where we'd like to be. And then at the end of the day, we want to show that the people we hope to help are actually getting help. And we want to be able to show that through evaluation and impact. And so that is the strategic framework. The two things that we're going to focus on today really grow out of that strategic framework. The first, which Michanda will talk about, is the DC Legal Aid Transformations Network, which we launched in June of 2021 after about a year, at least a year's worth of work. And then after Michanda, I'll come back and I'll talk about the coordinated intake and referral system that we're in the midst of building, and we'll hope will get us much farther along the way in reimagining the delivery of civil legal aid in DC. So I turn it over to you, Michanda.
Thank you so much, Kirra. And the purpose of the DC Transformations Network is advancing a user-centered system grounded in fostering well-being, anti-racism, and anti-poverty, starting with creating a coordinated intake and referral system in DC and evolving into a network of networks for connectivity, alignment, and action. This is definitely a emergent and evolving purpose as we continue to grow and evolve. Why? We know that it is so challenging to find the legal help that some of our residents need in DC. And unfortunately, we aren't making it easy for them either. So in 2021, the DC Bar Foundation brought together over 60 legal funders, legal aid providers, funders, community activists, social service providers, government, technology, and other stakeholders to discuss how we could reimagine a more equitable civil justice system. And out of that, the DC Legal Aid Transformation Network was formed. What we do, we're going to be built on social connectedness and coordination along with all of the other providers and partners, which comes from different sectors: the legal aid, funders, community activists, health and social services, allied partners, academia, government, philanthropy, media, banking, faith-based arts, business, and other stakeholders. And DC Legal Aid Transformations Network will ensure that the impact and stability and safety of our most vulnerable communities are at the forefront of every decision to better serve them. We will empower the stakeholders with the skills to navigate and negotiate life and access to use resources without guilt or shame, and serve as advocates, leveraging our collective resources to guarantee every resident have access to legal aid. With well-being at the forefront and the core of the work that we will do, we are aiming to fulfill the network's purpose by centering 5 domains of well-being blueprint that was created by the Full Frame Initiative. And that is social connectedness. There we go. Social connectedness to people and community in ways that allow them to give and receive. And we know that as communities, we need people and we can't do anything alone. And so this is definitely a very important, one of our important standard. Stability that will come from having the things that we can count on to be the same from day to day, and knowing that a small bump won't offset or have a domino effect if a crisis should arise. Safety, making sure that they have the ability to be themselves without significant harm. Mastery, feeling that they can influence what happens to us and having the skills to negotiate. And most importantly, meaningful and access to relevant resources to meet the basic needs without any shame, danger, or greater difficulty. And that's kind of important because sometimes people are very ashamed to come forward with what they need. And right now, this is an actual document of what our network looks like right now. This is how everyone looks. We have people who are scattered and alone, and we have those who are connected and intertangled. And so ultimately, what we want to see this grow over time as we continue to develop this network is we want to see it form so that everyone is connected and no one will be outliers like you see some of the ones that are disconnected. So how do we do that? We do that by meeting and coming to convenings. And we are the first project that this network will be doing is the coordinated intake and referral system. Kirra?
All right, so I know that this is not a new topic for our community. I know the idea of a coordinated intake and referral system is something that has been discussed many times. And so we're tackling it though. And so just kind of tying back to the original mission and vision that I articulated, and then also the strategic framework, we're really hoping to create a future where the things I mentioned before, including those that are listed here, they don't make a difference in your legal outcome. And so on the next slide, I also mentioned this a little bit already, but we know that folks who are looking for help now face a number of challenges. So they don't always know that they have a legal aid problem. They don't know where to go. They don't think or don't have, they either don't think they have the resources or actually don't have the resources to pay for an attorney. And we do have some networked efforts in the community more recently, some of which the DC Bar Foundation funds and some of which are separate. But we've got, a victims network. We've got one that's focused on eviction. We have one that's focused on family. And so we do have greater networked efforts than we've had before, but it's still difficult for people to figure out where to go. And we're finding that people are still actually making quite a few phone calls before they're getting to the right place. And so the other challenge that's identified here is that litigants are often winding up in court where they aren't represented and the other side is. And we know that creates an incredible power imbalance and is absolutely affecting the outcomes that people are experiencing. So on the next slide, what you'll see is, I guess it's been almost 2 years now where we said, let's take another shot at this. The Bar Foundation has attempted in the past to create a coordinated system through direct grants to organizations. And we thought, why don't we try a different approach to this problem to see what we can do? And so we began working with a consultant who's worked with some other legal aid programs across the country and who also has a strong technology background. And we began doing some research, and we also began having conversations with a number of legal aid partners. And so what you're seeing on this list is just some of the resources that we either read, consulted with, talked to, and the creation ultimately of a proposal that we released in December of 2020, which is called, I think it may be on the website as a concept paper. And so it was an initial effort to put into writing what a system might look like. And on the next slide, the idea is not different than what we talked about before, but it's the idea that if we had a coordinated system, people who have a problem would go through one door. They wouldn't go to 5, 6, 10 different legal aid providers trying to get help, or go to their church or wherever, their doctor, wherever. They would figure out the one place to go. They would tell their story one time. We would leverage technology to help get that person to the right provider. And then the district resident would get a warm referral to that provider. And so we would figure out on the back end through technology where that resident should be. On the next slide, this was sort of the initial sort of rendering of what the system might look like. But the idea is that there would be a host organization. We have no idea who this host organization would be. It could be a legal aid organization, it could be some law firm, it could be some new entity that hasn't been created, it could be anything. But the idea is that there would be an organization that would basically host the coordinated intake and referral system. That organization would be responsible for hiring a team to manage the system. So the initial proposal had the idea of basically a program manager and a program coordinator as staff. And then there would be a number of attorney or non-attorney navigators who would help respond to calls as they come in from people who need help. And so part of the telling your story one time would be telling it to those navigators, and it's going into the system. And within the back end of the system, all of the organizations who are participating in the system have identified their eligibility criteria, the kinds of cases that they take, whether they're at capacity or can take new clients. All of that is updated within the back end of the system and is taken into account in getting that person to the right place. On the next slide, the one thing I wanted to highlight is that as we're building this, we want to make sure that evaluation is an integral component of the system's development. And so that looks like the design, fine-tuning the implementation, and then looking at the impact. So as a part of the design, we did some client focus groups in April. So we partnered with both legal aid organizations and some social services organizations to speak with district residents who had either tried or actually had help from a legal aid provider. And we focused on vulnerable, particularly vulnerable populations, including those for whom English is not their first language, the elderly, and a couple of other groups. And that was the first of several focus groups that will do, but it was incredibly helpful to hear directly from people about what their experience has been. The other way that we're doing that is through a input and feedback process. I think some of you may have been among the organizations or individuals that responded to the document that we put out, sort of like a public comment period, but really it was a lengthy document that said, this is what we think it may look like, and can you give us some insight? Can you tell us some of the things that you're worried about or that you're concerned about? And we heard from more than 20 individuals and organizations. All of that input is being fed into the design of the system. And so I think what I want to emphasize is that it's not predetermined what this will look like. And it's an information gathering process. And we really do want to hear from everyone. And so there will be multiple opportunities throughout the development of the system for folks to weigh in. We do have on our website, on the next slide, you'll see a place where you can continue to get more information. It's on our website is dcbarfoundation.org. And then I think what we have is the section called, it's hard to see, but it's called Strategic Vision. And then within that, we'll have a place for coordinated intake and referral, where we'll start doing more robust updates so people can follow along and know what's happening with the system. Michanda mentioned earlier the DC Legal Aid Transformations Network, which has as its initial purpose this coordinated intake and referral system. The next convening of that group is on September 14th from 1 until 4. We do meet quarterly. I think we've had on average more than 50 people at each convening. I think at the last one we had upwards of 90. And so it's just been incredible, because I think there's definitely a sort of a recognition and acknowledgement that we need to do something, and we don't know exactly how to do it, but we are moving forward and doing our best. And so I do invite you to come to the next convening. And I think that we probably don't have very good, as I think about it, I know Nancy's there, but it would be benefit from more diverse representation, particularly from those who are working with low bono or modest means clients. So I welcome you. And, it could be a sub network of this larger network, but we do want to make sure that we're hearing from everyone and we're taking everything into account. And so with that, I think we're maybe a couple minutes over of how long we were going to talk, but I would love to open it up for any questions that people have.
Thank you so much. This is a really exciting and much needed concept and initiative. Does anybody have any questions? Please unmute and ask your question. We do have a couple of minutes. You can also ask questions in the chat as well.
I have a question. Hi, this is Laura Klein. I'm the chair of the federal government pro bono program. And I recently attended Maryland's legal justice conference. Can't remember exactly what it was called, Partners in Justice or something, but Maryland has developed a program called the Maryland Justice Passport. Are you guys familiar with that? Have you looked into that in your central intake examination? Because it's a similar idea of using technology. It can be accessed through court self-help centers or directly by users through the internet. And the same idea that someone would only have to tell their story once, and they can upload documents and do an intake, and then it can get passed around to whichever provider is appropriate, and they don't have to tell their story again. So I was just curious if you guys had connected with them or familiar with them.
Same consultant.
Ah, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Same
Thanks.
idea though. Yep. So there are definitely efforts in Maryland, Minnesota. I'm trying to think of the other jurisdictions, but those are the two off the top of my head. And I think, the interesting thing about, well, I don't know if it's interesting, but the particularly challenging aspect of DC is the number of legal aid providers that we have. So we don't have to deal with what a lot of people do. I mean, we have everybody in a city. We don't even have a rural component, but we have so many providers. So we have this abundance of riches. And even as a part of the development of the system, we recently pulled list of legal aid programs, like where somebody might go to get help. So whether you go to the DC Bar's website, the Pro Bono Center, I think we went to Law Help. We had the list of DC Bar Foundation grantees. They're all different numbers. And I know that's not I know that doesn't represent all the lists that exist, because I know every intake worker at every social services and legal services organization, they have a list too.
So we have time for a couple more questions. So please unmute and ask your question.
I will ask, do you have a vision for how that modest means low bono solo practitioner community fits in with the centralized intake and referral, either for them to get connected to clients who don't qualify for legal services, or what are good ways for this community to be a part of the table?
Yeah, I have two thoughts on that. And I'm actually looking at Nancy too. So I know that the other Nancy, I don't have a vision for that. And so there's quite a bit that we don't have a vision for. So we're just trying to understand. And so part of it, I think, is definitely being at the table at these convening conversations and other opportunities to weigh in. The second is everybody who calls that number, like you said, they're not going to be able to get help through the coordinated intake and referral system. And so I know that Nancy with the commission and the commission as a whole are very focused on what happens to people. Like, everybody isn't going to be able to get an attorney. So we really need to develop those self-help resources and get those who can afford to pay something to the right place. And so Nancy, I'm sort of curious if you want to say anything about the commission's efforts with self-help, because I'm wondering if there's a tie in there with what Nancy Lopez is raising.
Yeah. Well, hi, everybody. It's great to see you all. Two thoughts. I think first, I would envision the coordinated intake system connecting those of modest means to the DC Refers directory. So, if a navigator who's working in the coordinated intake system identifies someone who's sort of clearly in that modest means category, we just know they're not going to qualify for free legal aid. That navigator could not only just tell them about DC Refers, but even potentially help them, go through the DC Refers system to identify, those lawyers who could potentially serve them. But either way, connecting them to DC Refers, it seems to me like that's really marrying both of these sort of network referral ideas. But you're right, Kirra, that even with DC Refers, there are lots of people, and probably particularly modest means people, who will not be able to afford a lawyer or who won't be connected to one. And so, what we're doing at the commission is trying to ensure that we have really high quality self-help information readily available in the district to help those people for whom, for whatever reason, don't have a lawyer by their side. And again, we really see this effort working quite collaboratively with the coordinated intake system. Again, that navigator for coordinated intake should be able to say, well, hey, you're calling about a divorce and I may refer you to someone, but while I'm talking to you and have this opportunity, let me show you where all the self-help information is about divorce so that you know where to find it, so that, and it was funny, I was just looking at a website today in Louisiana where they even have legal information, legal referral, and they're like 2 buttons, and it's the same website, it's the same place, but one sort of connects to that self-help place and then the other connects to that getting a lawyer place. So it's all related, and we really see, I think, the Bar Foundation is really, quite gratefully, we're quite grateful they've taken on the leadership of coordinated intake, and we really want to sort of own this self-help piece so that we can have both really in good shape by the time, both are able to be then, sort of released and launched into our community.
Yeah.
So it's time for us to end our program. So I want to thank everybody, particularly Kirra and Michanda, for giving us this wonderful program, and for all of you for attending. And I again invite you to come and attend our next DC Refers Reconnect program on August 7th. And if you're a lawyer who is interested in joining our directory or know of a lawyer, please do send them to us. This month, we're looking for employment lawyers. We have a different theme every month, and this is Employment Lawyer Month. So if you please send your favorite employment lawyer to DC Refers or tell them about us. Thank you so much, everybody, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.